Good morning and welcome to the Monday Market Update, where the data doesn't matter and our job is to sit here and read headlines and cry. Andrew, how are you doing this morning?
Nothing matters. Everything's falling up. No, life's good. It's just nothing matters anymore. And it's been our mantra now for months. We thought this would be a mantra for weeks, and now it's just been months of the same mantra.
Yeah, 4 months. Data is interesting, but not really. And where it's interesting, it still doesn't matter. So let's get into the things that do matter. Let's talk about what happened last week. Last week was a good week. Things slowed down. They moved into a better direction. We were low, mid on the volatility meter, kind of smooth and steady. What happened last week, Andrew? Why did we have this nice little cut down?
Well, let's hit the slide up of kind of the data that pulled up from last week. Let me pull it up on my end. All right, so I got to look at it over here. My screen in front of me is too small. Honestly, there was some good data that came out. Personal consumption expenditures came in lower than expectations. We had good news on that, but that really didn't rock the markets. Really, the only thing that moved the markets is really the only thing that has moved the markets. It's that old Howie Mandel show. Do we have a deal or no deal? And as we ended towards the end of the week, we got the banker's offer, and it looked like we were going to have a deal. There was a lot of noise about us potentially having a deal. And then over the weekend, the administration slammed that glass box shut and hollered back, no deal. So it's all just deal or no deal at this point.
Yeah, well, in varying degrees of it. At the end of last week, it's looking very favorable. It's looking likely. Oil prices are going down. We saw interest rates improve over the weekend. There's a little bit more pullback. And then we got Monday morning, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. I want to give some time just to that. But before we get through it, as Mr. Katie said, we got big news last week. The econ data for PCE is something that we are really looking forward to because of the increased pressure on prices. Looking at what's going on, these are inflation indexes and inflation trackers. Honestly, wasn't that bad. We were pretty flat. There's a slight increase in the year over year that was anticipated and hit on projection, so no big surprises there. We got some labor stuff. Jobless claims were flat and in line. Continued claims are right there. Nothing crazy, nothing moving the needle real bad. Durable goods orders came in a little off. But okay, so we've got some conflicting info there. The PMI output growth rises to the strongest level since 2022. So we've got construction, we've got manufacturing, we have growth, we have jobs that are fairly stable, we have prices going up a little bit. Okay, whatever. None of that matters. Let's see what's going to happen this week. Maybe something will matter this week because it is the first week of the month. And you know what first week of the month means? It means jobs. It means we got good old unemployment rate. It means we got non-farm payrolls. And here's another month where we're looking at this dropping pretty hard, especially on the non-farm payroll. It's down to just 85,000 jobs added. Is that too low in estimations? And do you think we're going to miss on those?
I think we'll miss to the high side. Labor has shown extreme resilience. And I think it's just coming down to consumer spending. I mean, I saw a report yesterday that consumer debt's up to $1.25 trillion. and this expansion of debt and, delinquencies are, super high on this debt. I think the American consumer hasn't woken up yet and decided to just stop buying things, which means manufacturing is still adding jobs. I think we have an opportunity to miss to it. Is it going to matter? I mean, sure, if we had a gangbusters jobs report of 300,000 job creations, we're going to rock markets. If we miss 85 to 95 or 85 to 75 or even 85 to 125, I don't think it's going to be enough to overshadow oil and the conflict. I mean, just from, midday on Friday, we saw oil drop all the way down to $86 a barrel. 86.58 was kind of the low point on Friday. This morning, spiked all the way back up to 94.24. It's a huge jump over the weekend. All of that is going to overshadow hits or misses on jobs. I mean, yeah, the three big ones for me this week is the JOLTS, the ADP, and then the overall, jobs report that comes out on Friday. Can BLS be trusted? No. I mean, although they definitely have seemed to get their act in line over the past, call it 6 months, comparatively speaking. I am curious to see revisions. I'm always curious to see revisions because BLS is probably the worst track record of bad data from anything that we see that would impact our industry. So I'm always curious on the revisions, whether they revise up or down. But even the revisions lately haven't been catastrophic. So I think all of this equates to a nothing burger. And it comes back to Howie Mandel once again. Do we have a deal or no deal?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Usually a week like this is pretty volatile, pretty fun to watch. You start off with JOLTS, and then you get the ADP jobs, and then you have jobless claims, continued claims from May, and then you got unemployment rate and NFP. Like that's 4 days straight of labor, and 4 days straight of labor could be really, really interesting. We'll probably get some conflicting data. I think we're going to miss on the high side for non-farm payrolls. I do think it's probably going to come in 110, 115-ish. And okay, no one's really going to care. I mean, it's good that labor is staying consistent, but to Andrew's point, people are still spending. It doesn't matter that inflation is starting to rock. No one knows how to lay off. And since, COVID era, spending has been spending, and people are still spending, and they'll go into debt to spend. And it's going to take something a lot more severe in order to slow that down. We are seeing some drop in things like travel. Airline prices have been ridiculous lately. I've been looking myself for summer vacation. A lot of people are just shifting some of their priorities and shifting their travel plans, but it hasn't really hit, all our tracking metrics. The cost of oil and the cost of energy is first going to hit things like manufacturing. It's going to hit cost of goods. It's going to hit, getting things in. And, we've gotten some of that, but not really there yet. So this week could matter, could not matter. It's probably not going to matter. Deal or no deal, that's all anyone cares about. Speaking of things that no one really cares about, let's talk about the Fed. This has been totally irrelevant for a while. I mean, we're sitting here looking at an aggregator that's showing the likelihood of a rate increase possibly by the end of the year. And no one cares. No one's really been talking about this because it's fairly irrelevant right now.
It is fairly irrelevant. Obviously, we have the new Fed chair in place at this point. Whether we see an increase or not, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think a rate increase happening may actually help the markets find footing. I think the indecisiveness of rate cut, rate hold, rate raise, markets hate unknown. If we can just get something to happen, I think we could find some surety. And frankly, I would love to see this Fed chair, if I could project just a little bit, I would love to see this Fed chair more just openly choreograph the Fed's thoughts. That's the one thing I really had a problem with Jerome Powell was I don't know whether it was his inability to do it or whether he just wanted to keep his cards extremely close, but it was always a mystery what the Fed was thinking until he hit his press conference. And I would love to see a Fed chair that actually choreographs a little bit deeper and says, hey, here's our thoughts. Here's our metric of where we will raise interest rates. So when this metric hits, this is going to happen. The metric's there. It's all in all of their heads. If unemployment goes to this, we cut interest rates. If these things happen, and I think it would help the markets find so much footing if we could just get a little bit of clarity on how the Fed thinks, what they're thinking, and what their plan is.
Yeah, I think for Powell, I mean, there was a little bit of an ego struggle there, and he wasn't going to give up anything he didn't have to. Definitely kept all the cards close to the vest. Maybe part of that was just wisdom and age and experience of knowing I'm not going to say something that's going to move markets severely when it's just, hey, this is what we're seeing. Like the markets will overreact to a Fed chair's notes. And, choreographing and telegraphing future moves, while that's valuable when we are back when we used to be in a data dependent market, yeah, you never know, the data could change so severely. We still have not been able to find any footing. And I do think, to your point, an interest rate increase could help stabilize things a little bit on the inflation side, but it just depends on how long we're staying up at these levels that we are. How long is oil going to be over $90 a barrel? We got a question in the live stream right now from Nick. Headline will continue to dominate. How much can a new Fed chair overpower the news? Not much.
Not much.
Maybe for a day. If he says something if there's a slow news day and we got the Fed taking a surprising, stance on something, that could move things a little bit temporarily if we got some better direction. But, everyone that was thinking, oh man, we get Powell out and we get Warsh in, and now all of a sudden, we've got someone who's going to, work and rally to lower rates. Well, working to lower rates doesn't necessarily mean lowering the Fed funds rate. It means putting things in place to help all the other mortgage rates, interest rates, et cetera, stabilize and find some solid footing. So I think there's that disconnect with expectation and reality. Like the Fed can't come in here and cut rates right now. That's going to throw things off and likely make mortgage rates even higher.
I would agree 100%. And I think, I think Warsh can move markets. I think, right now the markets are seeking a footing to hang on. They're seeking something for direction. It's all just a whim right now. So if Warsh would actually, take a public stance and be very, very clear and direct on things, I think he could move markets. But is it going to overshadow the fact that oil's up almost 8% today? No. Like at some point, the markets do understand that Warsh is just one of 9 voting members in the Fed. It's not like he makes the decision of whether rates are cut or not. He's just one of the voting members. Now, him taking strong stances and being very public on things, I would hope to see, because it gives us direction and it gives the market a footing of where he stands. But it's not going to overrule a day where oil jumps 8% in a day. That is an abnormal movement in oil once again.
Yeah. And chair or not, he's still the new guy on the block. We've got a lot of personalities and we have a lot of members of the Fed who have been vocal and have shared their thoughts, and they've been on these pressers for a while, talking about the direction that they see and, their opinion on the different votes. So yeah, he ain't gonna move. It doesn't matter how much he wants to direct something. You can't direct a room full of 9 people unless you get everyone on board, and that's going to take a while. So
agreed.
We'll see where things are going on the Fed funds rate, but that was the big headline. The last couple of years is all about when are we getting rate cuts, when when are mortgage rates going down, and now it's just news. So let's get into where the interest rates went last week. This looks a lot better than it should if we had real-time updating here. We did get some favorable movement. Now we're popping back up. This has been our world for 4 months now. You go in all the way back to February, and you see that, kind of late February, early March, as things started ratcheting up, settled a little bit. We settle on news, we dip down on expectations, and then pop right back up again. Especially since the entire month of May has been going on, it's kind of an ugly trend.
It is. And I think it's worthy of noting today, from where we closed on Friday to where we opened today is about 22 basis points worse. What does 22 basis points mean? If you quoted the exact same interest rate on Friday as you did today, it's going to cost 22 basis points in cost to hold that rate. Typically is, that's what you're looking at. Are lenders passing it all, passing extra? We don't really know its exact number on there, but we're 22 basis points worse. The scary part a little bit for me is that we have broken beneath the 25-day and the 50-day moving average on mortgage-backed securities. And before we reach any levels of support, we really have another 20 basis points we could go to the worst before we find support. 10-year Treasury is finding a little bit of support at like a 4.258. So we'll see if that holds. But if that doesn't hold, get ready to see the 10-year back up at almost 460, 458.8, 459. We could be in for another interesting week. As we've said in the past, if you like it, lock it, guys. Don't play games with the market. We all think we're going to have a great Monday because we had a great Friday, and one tweet over the weekend changes everything.
Yeah, we're sitting 451 right now on the 10-year. It's moving. The UMBS 50 is dropped 44 bips in real time right now. I'm like, 10, 15 is usually pretty easy to absorb. Once you get up to that 40, then it can be wheels off. It can go a whole lot further. And honestly, this 451 on the 10-year, that can go up into the high 4.5s. It could hit 4.6. Like, there's room for things to get worse. But let's talk about why they're getting worse. What happened this morning, specifically this morning, and where do we go from here? So I got some articles in front of me. I don't know. This
Hit 'em up
just
now.
happened in real time, an hour ago. Yeah, Al Jazeera posting. We've got, articles that are translated from Farsi, and I'm sitting here reading, native speakers' comments on like, well, this is what's actually being like. The markets are all interpreting this stuff in real time. So if I was to summarize it in my own words, this is what I'm saying. So Iran is saying, nah, fam, we're not negotiating right now because Israel is still launching, attacks in Lebanon against Hezbollah. And that's a non-starter for us. That's, in violation of what they believe the peace talks were about, and, the general overarching, theme of a ceasefire. Like, even though it was negotiated with the U.S., they consider Israel to be part of this with the U.S. And even though Israel and Lebanon are two completely different countries than Iran and the U.S., it's all being treated together. And Iran basically said, yeah, we're prepared to completely shut down the Strait of Hormuz, in addition to another strait, in addition to ramping up and escalating the shutdown of trade through the area. And the only silver lining here, the only thing positive I've seen anyone write is from some of these native Farsi speakers who were like, well, what they're really saying is any talks of peace are worthless if there's still, ongoing escalation and, attacks being carried out over here. So they're shifting the focus, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Trump and the U.S. What kind of authority do we have over Israel? How, are we willing to like bend backwards and say, hey, y'all chill? Or are we going to keep a hardline stance? And I think the markets are fearing that the U.S. is not going to take a stand to try to de-escalate that.
I would tend to agree with you. I think we don't have a great track record of telling Israel to stand down. We have a way more inline track record with joining in with it than telling them to stand down. And I think we're kind of in a pickle this morning, folks. It's gonna be an interesting week. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, until there's a meaningful ceasefire, Iran's going to stay back, and Trump's latest MO on it is, then I'm going to continue to bomb the shit out of you. Excuse the French, but that's kind of like, okay, if you don't want to talk peace, then I'm going to bomb you. And it's been 4 months of a 2-week war, and it's really starting to weigh on all of us.
And it's forcing us to be, in the political spectrum. Like, I despise politics. I just don't like it. I feel like it brings out the worst in people.
Agreed.
And it brings up lots of lies and deception and so much spin doctoring in the media. And I'm like, you can take a true thing and make it a lie very, very easily with the way that you try to sell and pitch a point. And I like to think I've got good discernment of that. And it keeps me out of headlines and out of the news as much as possible because, yeah, I'm just not all about that. But now I'm sitting here having to analyze and go through, like, what's the exit strategy here? Does the U.S., make moves with Israel? Do we have any authority over Netanyahu? Like, how do we get the things that we need in order to, just finish this conflict? Like, we don't have a good exit strategy right now. And as we lose leverage, we have a president who does not like to look weak and does not like to look like a failure and is very sensitive about how he is perceived, especially, really just by his own base and in his own mind. And any type of failure that doesn't look like it was, our planning and our strategies is going to be really difficult to accept. And so my concern is that as Israel and Iran both dig their heels in, that the US is just going to go over the top and double down, and it could extend this thing a lot longer.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in it for a little bit, folks. Again, if you like it, lock it. You know, Nash and I talked kind of prior to this. We don't have unlocked pipelines. We're the guys doing the Monday morning update here. Do what you want, do as you please, but don't be surprised if this thing gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah, not just lock it if you like it, like be the trusted advocate. You know, the thing is, everything around this takes place in the news cycle. Everyone's seeing these headlines, they're getting pieces of information, just enough knowledge for an individual based on their sphere and what kind of content they consume to think they have an idea of what's going on, to think they understand the short and long-term implications of this. Your borrowers are not necessarily qualified to know if it's a good time to lock or not. We are experts and we don't even know, and we're not taking that risk. So letting a borrower take that risk because they believe, oh, well, this is gonna end up here soon, and this is just a, you know, part of the deal, and it's okay, cool. But, you know, take that extra step, give a little extra advice, and, you know, take what you've learned today and try to reason with people on, we need to just lock what we've got. If you have been floating for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you've lost. You're losing over any measurable time period in the last few months. It's going the wrong direction. There's little blips in certain days where things are better, but there's no reason to believe it's going to get much better any quicker. So get people secured, get them knowing what they're going to have. You know, maybe we'll come back and refi in 9 to 12 months. I don't know, but be prepared to get that in, because the last thing you want to do is get someone committed and excited about something, and you play out this headline game for the next couple of weeks. We're pointed in the wrong direction, and in all likelihood, we'll keep going in the wrong direction until we get a new tweet, new news article, and the arrow moves back into the positive.
You wrapped it up perfectly. That's all I got. Appreciate you guys hopping on.
I mean, y'all take care. We'll be back next Monday. Hopefully we have some good news to report. And if not, hey, well, whatever it is, we're going to be talking about it. We'll help you get equipped so you know how to handle things going forward and become the expert in your sphere and your circle. Appreciate y'all. Take care.
Appreciate you. See you.